किचनमा नाङ्लोमा गोल्डो छ लौरामा बस्ने छ चामल छैन भने चामल लैजा बट्टामा छ चामल छ ल म त अन्त चामल त किनेर खाइरहेको छु त्यो रुममा छ कि छैन मौली त्यसले नसक्नु होइन मौली त्यसले मैले त तेरो अनुहार चाहिँ बस्नु नदेखा भुत जस्तै होला फोन त यत्रो यत्रो बोक्छ फोनमा कहिले हेर्दैन कहिले आउनु कहाँ आउनु कहिले आउनु एक 8-9 तारिकतिर मलाई भन्नु कि म छुट्टी हालेर अझै मैले डक्टर देखाउनु मैले पैसा दिएर पठाएँ कस्तो कस्तो मान्छे खसी खाँदो गरेर कति हजार हान्छ आमाको याद छ होला केको चिया छ त्यहाँ चिया छ चिनीको
0, systole 0.1 second, ventricle 0.3 seconds, systole 0.1 second, uh, atrial systole 0.1 second, diastole 0.7 seconds. Oh. Ventricle contraction 0.3 second, diastole 0.5 seconds, 3-5 and 1-7. Atria systole 0.1 second, atria diastole 0.7 second, ventricle systole 0.3, diastole 0.5, ventricle diastole 0.5, total 0.8 second. Atrial systole 0.1, then atrial relaxation for 0.7 seconds. 0.1 second. Then you have ventricle diastole. Zero point 3 seconds. Ventricle systole, ventricle diastole. This is ventricle systole. Ventricle systole, SISTOL, systole. Ventricle systole, ventricle diastole. Atrial systole 0.1 second, atrial systole remaining 0.7 seconds, diastole. Joint diastole, joint diastole, atria plus ventricle relaxes. Diastole, joint diastole, atria plus ventricle diastole. Equals to 5. A equals to, okay, atria is equals to systole, ventricle is equals to diastole in this phase. Atria equals to diastole, ventricle is equals to systole. Atria is equals to diastole ventricle is equals to systole. At filling. Okay. Joint dialysis. Joint dial. Joint dialysis. Atria plus ventricle. 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 Joint dialysis. At the end of joint diastole, 70% to two-thirds of ventricle filled by blood. Passive filling 0.4 second. Passive filling 0.4 second. At the end of joint diastole, 70% 2 by 3 ventricle filled by blood. Passive filling 0.4 seconds. At the end of joint diastole, 70% 2 by 3 ventricle filled by blood. At the end of joint diastole, at the end of joint diastole, 70% 2 by 3 two-third of ventricle fills by blood. Passive filling two-third of ventricle filled by blood. Passive filling 0.4 second. Passive filling 0.4 second. 0.4 second. Joint diastole. Atria relaxes and ventricle also relaxes. Okay. At the end of the joint diastole, 70% of the ventricle fills by blood. 70% two-third two-third ventricle filled by blood. Passive filling 0.4 second. At the end of joint diastole, 70% 2 by 3 two-third ventricle fills by blood. Passive filling 0.4 second. Okay. PASSIV passive filling FIN passive filling two-third filling of ventricle by blood. Two-third or 70% filling. Passive filling 0.4 second. 0.4 second. Two-third of or 70% filling. Okay, two-third or 70% filling. Ventricle. Passive filling of ventricle by blood for 0.4 approximately 0.4 seconds. 0.4 second for 0.4 second. Okay, two-third of ventricle fills by blood. Okay, joint diastole. At the end of joint diastole, at the end of joint diastole, passive filling of ventricle by blood. Two-third of 70% filling. Two-third or 70% filling. At the end of joint diastole, 70% two-third ventricle fills by blood. At the end of joint diastole, 70% two-third ventricle fills by blood. Passive filling 0.4 second. Okay, got it. At the end of joint diastole, 70% 2 by 3 ventricle fills by blood. At the end of joint diastole, 70% 2 by 3 two-third ventricle fills by blood. Passive filling. Break. At the end of joint diastole 70%, 0.4 second. Okay, passive filling. This is EP in SA node. A generation of action potential diet. AP in SA node. AP action potential in SA node. Action potential from SA node. AP action potential in SA node. Okay, 0.1 second. At the end of atrial systole, remaining 30%, one third blood fills the ventricle. Remaining 30%, one third. Ventricle filling by blood. Okay. Active filling. This one is active filling 0.1 second. This one is 0.1 second. 0.1 second. 0. At the end of the systole of atria. At the end of the systole of the atria, remaining 30% of one third of the blood fills in fills ventricle. Active filling. This one is active filling only for 0.1 second. Active filling only for 0.1 second. Active filling only for 0.1 second. First heart sound due to closing of AV valve, atrioventricular valve during systole of ventricle. First heart sound due to closing of AV valve during systole of ventricle. Second heart sound due to closing of semilunar valve during ventricular diastole. Second heart sound due to closing of semilunar valve during ventricular diastole. Second heart sound due to closing of semilunar valve during ventricular diastole. During ventricular diastole. During ventricular diastole. Second heart sound due to closing of semilunar valve during ventricular diastole. At the end of atrial systole, remaining 30%, one third, ventricle filling by blood, active filling. First heart sound closing of AV valve during systole. First heart sound due to closing of AV valve during systole of ventricle. The second heart sound due to closing of semilunar valve during ventricular diastole. Second heart sound due to closing of semilunar valve during ventricular diastole. Ventricular diastole. Joint tellus. Second heart sound due to closing of semilunar valve during ventricular diastole. Cardiac cycle 0.8 second. Complete contraction or relaxation of atria and ventricle. takes in Priyanka and Lok Sabha. At the joint diastole. At the end of joint diastole. At the end of joint diastole. At the end of joint diastole. Hmm. Cause due to closure of cuspid sound. At the end of joint diastole, SAN AP is by SAN. At the end of the joint diastole, action potential is generated SAN. due to closure of Cosby valve. Next, heart sound. The sound due to closure of semilunar valve. Due to closure of semilunar valve. Due to closure of semilunar valve. Okay. Dub sound due to closure of Cosby valve. Dub sound due to closure of semilunar valve. Due to closure of semilunar valve. At the end of joint diastole, action potential is generated in SAN. Dub sound due to closure of Cosby valve and LUB. This is LUB. Sound due to closure of Cosby valve. Dub sound due to closure of semilunar valve. Okay. At the end of joint diastole. At the end of joint diastole. Okay. 70 or two-thirds of ventricle is filled by blood. BLOD, blood. Passive filling. PASSIV, passive filling. PASSIV, passive filling. Filling. At the end of systole of atria remaining remaining one third blood fills one third or 30% blood fills the ventricle. At the first heart sound due to closing of AV valve during systole of ventricle. First heart sound at the end of atrial systole, remaining 30%, one third blood, ventricle filling by blood. Okay, active filling 0.1 second, ventricle filling by blood. Okay, active filling 0.1 second, active filling 0.1 second. At the end of systole of atria, remaining one third blood, 30% fills the ventricle for 0.1 second. First heart sound due to closing of AV valve during systole of ventricle. At the end of atrial systole is equals to remaining 30%, one third blood. Action potential in SA node. Okay, यहाँ पर है action. हाँ, at the end of systole, remaining 30%, one third ventricle filling by blood, active filling. First heart sound due to closing of AV valve during systole of ventricle. Dub sound. Second heart sound due to volume of blood collected in each ventricle. In each ventricle at the end of their diastole. At the end of their diastole. Volume of blood which collects in each ventricle at the end of their diastole. EDV is directly proportional to size of ventricle. EDV is directly proportional to size of ventricle. Size of ventricle. Volume of blood collected in each at the end of their volume of blood collected in each ventricle at the end of their systole. At the end of their diastole. Okay, systole बोलेगा. At the end of their diastole. Size of the ventricle. EDV is directly duration of filling of ventricle, and EDV is directly proportional to SV. Stroke volume. EDV is directly proportional to stroke volume. EDV is directly proportional to stroke volume. Okay. EDV is directly proportional to size of ventricle. Size of ventricle. EDV is directly proportional to duration of filling. Duration of filling. And EDV, end diastole volume, is directly proportional to stroke volume. Stroke volume. Stroke volume. Right, single ventricle, 120 ml. The volume of blood which collects in each ventricle at the end of their diastole. Volume of blood which collects in each ventricle at the end of their diastole. EDV, size of ventricle. EDV, direct proportional duration of filling of ventricle. EDV is direct proportional stroke volume, 120 ml. Single ventricle, 120 ml. End diastole volume, okay. Volume of blood which collects in each ventricle at the end of their diastole, okay. End systolic volume, ESV, end systolic volume, 50 ml fixed, okay. Volume of blood which remains in ventricle at the end of their systole. ESV, end systolic volume is equals to end diastolic volume minus stroke volume. End systolic volume is equals to end diastolic volume minus stroke volume. ESV. ESV. End systolic volume, 50 ml fixed. Volume of blood remaining in ventricle even after astaghfirullah, even after volume of blood remaining in ventricle even after the systole of ventricle is called end systolic volume, ESV. ESV is equals to end diastole volume, end diastolic volume minus stroke volume, ESV. So volume of blood which remains in each ventricle at the end of systole. Volume of blood which remains in each ventricle at the end of their systole. At the end of their systole, volume of blood which remains in ventricle, which remains in each ventricle. Volume of blood which remains in each ventricle at the end of the systole. ESV is equals to EDV minus stroke volume 50 ml fixed. Volume of blood which remains in each ventricle at the end of the systole. ESV is equals to EDV minus SV. In diastolic volume minus stroke volume. In diastolic volume. In systolic volume 50 ml fixed. Volume of blood which remains in each ventricle at the end of the systole. ESV is equals to EDV minus SV. EDV is directly proportional to stroke volume. Stroke, stroke volume. End diastole. 1 minute. In diastolic volume EDV 120 ml. Volume of blood which collects in each ventricle at the end of their diastole. EDV. In diastolic volume EDV is equals to 120 ml. 120 ml. In diastolic volume. In the diastolic volume. In diastolic volume. Huh. In the diastolic volume. In systolic volume. Huh. In diastolic volume is 120 ml. In systolic volume is 70 ml. Sorry, 50 ml. Both in systolic volume is fixed. Volume of blood that can fill the ventricle when it is completely relaxed is 120 ml. The volume of in systolic volume, the volume of blood that retains in the ventricle even after the contraction of ventricle is called ESV. ESV is equal to EDV. End diastolic volume minus stroke volume. That's it. Volume of blood which collects in each ventricle at the end of their diastole. EDV. Size of ventricle. EDV. Duration of filling of ventricle. Okay. 50 ml fixed blood volume of blood which remains in each ventricle at the end of their systole, even after the end of this systole. Okay. ESV is equals to EDV minus stroke volume. Okay. Stroke volume 70 ml. Volume of blood which is pumped by each ventricle during single systole. During volume of blood which is second session is also over. Volume of blood. Volume of blood that is pumped by the ventricle. 70 ml. Stroke volume 70 ml. Volume of blood which is pumped by the ventricle during single systole. Okay, during single systole. Okay, this is stroke volume, also called a break volume. Stroke volume is also called 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 break volume. 70 ml. Volume of blood which is pumped by each ventricle during single systole. Break volume, also called break volume. Stroke volume, 70 ml. Volume of blood which is pumped by each ventricle during single systole. Stroke volume, 70 ml. Volume of blood which is pumped by each ventricle. A stroke volume, SV, 70 ml. Volume of blood which is pumped by each ventricle during single systole. A stroke volume is called break volume. Stroke volume, 70 ml. Volume of blood pumped by each. Volume of blood pumped out by each ventricle is volume of blood pumped out by each ventricle is 70 ml during during its systole. During its volume of blood ventricle is 70 ml during its stroke volume must be 70 ml. Volume of blood which is pumped by each ventricle during single systole. Break volume. This is also known as break volume. Break volume. Stroke volume. Break volume. Break volume. ब्रेक भी आ रही है कि ब्रेक वॉल्यूम भी आ रही है कि ब्रेक वॉल्यूम भी आ रही है कि ब्रेक वॉल्यूम एस वी स्ट्रो ई डी वी माइनस ई एस वी ई डी वी माइनस ई एस वी stroke volume. Okay, n systolic volume is equals to EdV minus ESV SV stroke volume EdV minus SV EdV minus SV EdV minus SV break volume during single systole. Okay, volume of blood which is pumped by each ventricle. Volume of blood pumped by each ventricle during single systole. During single systole break volume. Say during single systole 70 volume of blood which is pumped by each ventricle during single systole. BRE big volume BRE के break volume allow stroke volume 70 ml. ESV 50. ESV 50. Stroke volume 70. Okay, got it. End diastolic volume. EDP. ESP, EDP, okay. Atria systole 0.1 second, diastole 0.7 second, ventricle systole 0.3 seconds, diastole 0.5 second, total 0.8 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 second. Passive filling. At the end of joint diastole 70%, 2 by 3, 2/3, 2 by 3, 2/3 ventricle filled by blood. At the end of joint diastole 70%, 2 by 3 ventricle filled by blood. Passive filling 0.4 second, 0.4 second. Second heart sound due to closing of semilunar valve during ventricular diastole. During ventricular diastole. At the end of joint diastole. At the end of joint diastole. At the end of atrial systole remaining 30%, 1 by 3. Active filling. AV valve during systole of ventricle. Second heart sound due to closing of semilunar valve during ventricular diastole. Systole of ventricle, ventricular diastole. Systole of ventricle, ventricular diastole. Ventricular diastole and systole of ventricle. Okay, got it. Cardiac output, CO, cardiac output, volume of blood pumped by each ventricle per minute. That is 70 into 60. 60. नहीं 70 into 60 नहीं, कितने टाइम्स निकलेगा शायद ये 0.8. 70 into heartbeat 72, that is 5000 ml. Okay, volume of blood, cardiac output, volume of blood pumped out. एउटा cardiac output हुन्छ, एउटा cardiac cycle हुन्छ. Cardiac cycle complete systole contraction र diastole of atria and ventricle, atria or ventricle or cardiac muscles भन्दा भयो. It is a complete contraction and relaxation of atria or ventricular cardiac muscle. Cardiac cycle, it is complete contraction and relaxation of atria or ventricle or cardiac muscles. It is complete contraction and relaxation of atria or ventricle or cardiac muscles. Cardiac cycle. Cardiac cycle, it is complete contraction and relaxation of atria or ventricle or cardiac muscles. Contraction systole, relaxation diastole. It is a complete contraction systole and complete muscles systole. During 0.8 second. Duration of single contraction and relaxation of atria or ventricle 0.8 second. Single contraction of contraction and relaxation of single atria and ventricle. Single contraction and relaxation of atria or ventricle. Duration of single contraction and relaxation of atria or ventricle, 0.8 seconds. Cardiac cycle. It is complete contraction and relaxation of atria or ventricle or cardiac muscles. It is complete contraction and relaxation of atria or ventricle or cardiac muscles. It is complete contraction. हाँ तब सेंड कर दूंगी. It is complete contraction and relaxation of atria or ventricle or cardiac muscles. It is complete contraction and relaxation of atria or ventricle. It is complete contraction and relaxation. Astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah. Don't think about it. It is complete cardiac muscle. That is cardiac cycle. Cardiac output is the cardiac output. It is the volume of blood pumped by each ventricle per minute. Cardiac output is the volume of blood pumped out by each ventricle per minute. Volume of blood pumped by each ventricle per minute multiplied by the heart rate, number of beats per minute. Okay, stroke volume in 1 minute. Stroke volume in 1 minute. Okay, 70 into heartbeat. Cardiac output is directly proportional to heartbeat rate. Cardiac output is directly proportional to heartbeat rate. Cardiac output is equals to stroke volume into heartbeat rate, volume of blood pumped by each ventricle per minute. Stroke volume into heartbeat rate, 70 into 72. Approximately 5000 ml. Approximately 5000 ml or 5 liter per minute. Cardiac output is 5 liter per minute. Cardiac output liter per minute. Okay, ब्रेक लेना था ना. नहीं वो हैबिट है शायद. थैंक्स contacting you. What the heck? Thank you for contacting Curio Desk Education. Please let us know how we can help you. To you earliest. Business account है ये. Auto generated. हाँ ऑटो जनरेटेड ही तो है. Is that me? Purchase mint. Cardiac output. Volume of blood pumped by each ventricle. Volume of blood pumped by each ventricle per minute is called cardiac output. Volume of blood pumped by each ventricle per minute multiplied by the heart rate, number of beats per minute. Volume of blood pumped by each ventricle per minute multiplied by the heart rate, number of beats per minute. Number of beats per minute. 6,000, 7,000, 8,000, 3,000, and then there is remaining 4,000, right? 3,000, 5,000, 5,000. I see. Cardiac output, CO, volume of blood pumped by each ventricle. I can't, na? Let it be there. I feel traumatized. It's okay. Volume of blood pumped by each ventricle per minute multiplied by the heart rate. Cardiac output. Volume of blood pumped by each ventricle per minute. Volume of blood pumped by each ventricle per minute. Volume of blood pumped by each ventricle per minute. Okay, stroke volume multiplied by heartbeat rate. Cardiac output is directly proportional to heartbeat rate. Our cardiac output is 5 liter or 5,000 ml per minute. Okay. Volume of blood pumped out by ventricle per minute. Volume of blood pumped by each ventricle per minute. Blood pressure. This is a vessel, blood vessel, diastole. 80 mmHg. Diastole. 80 mmHg. Okay. Pressure which exerts on a wall of blood vessel during the flow of blood. Blood pressure. Blood pressure is the pressure which exerted on wall of blood vessels during flow of blood. Wall of pressure exerted on wall of blood vessel. Pressure exerted the flows through the blood. Okay. 80 mmHg diastole. 80 mmHg wall of vessel. 80 mmHg लगता है इसका pressure. Measured by sphygmometer, 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 sphygmometer, measured by sphygmometer, measured by sphygmometer, measured by sphygmometer. Volume of blood pumped by each ventricle per minute. Okay, blood pressure. Pressure which exerts on wall of blood vessels during flow of blood. 80 mmHg. Measured by sphygmometer. 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 Okay, sphygmometer measured by sphygmometer. Sphygmometer measured by sphygmometer. Types of blood pressure: diastolic blood pressure 80 mmHg, systolic blood pressure 120 mmHg. Systole. Types of blood pressure: diastolic blood pressure 80 mmHg, diastole. Systolic blood pressure 120 mmHg, systole 120 mmHg. Blood pressure increases. Okay, 120 by 80, 120 by 80 normal. Pulse pressure SBP, DBP. Systolic blood pressure, diastolic blood pressure. Systolic blood pressure and diastolic blood pressure. Systolic blood pressure minus diastolic blood pressure, that is 120 minus 80 is equals to 40 mmHg. 40 mmHg. Pulse rate is direct measure of heart rate. Pulse rate is direct measure of heart rate. Pulse rate is direct measure of heart rate. Pulse Pulse rate is a direct measure of heart rate. Pulse rate is a direct measure of heart rate. Pulse rate is a direct measure of heart rate. कुछ नहीं हुआ है, बस ऐसे ही. Pulse pressure. Systolic blood pressure and diastolic blood pressure. Systolic blood pressure and diastolic blood pressure. Systolic blood pressure is 120 mmHg. Diastolic blood pressure is 80 mmHg. Okay. Pulse pressure. Pulse pressure is equals to systolic blood pressure minus diastolic, SBP, minus DBP. SBP, systolic सिस्टोलिक डायस्टोलिक नहीं होता है, सिस्टोलिक ब्लड प्रेशर माइनस डायस्टोलिक ब्लड प्रेशर 40 mmHg 40 mmHg pulse pressure, systolic blood pressure, diastolic blood pressure 120 minus 80 40 mmHg. High blood pressure. Systolic blood pressure, diastolic blood pressure. 40 mmHg pulse pressure. Okay, high blood pressure 140 by 90, hypertension. High blood pressure 140 by 190, 140 by 90. High blood pressure 140 by 90, 140 by 90 भयो भने के हुन्छ, blood pressure ज्यादा भयो भन्छ, 140 by 90. Okay, low blood pressure 110 divided by 70. Okay, 110 by 70, 110 by 70, 110 by 70. Okay, hypertension is 140 by 90. Low blood pressure is 110 by 7 mmHg. Tachycardia when heartbeat increases. Bradycardia when heartbeat decreases. Tachycardia, bradycardia. Tachycardia, heartbeat rate increases. Bradycardia, heartbeat rate decreases. Increases. Tachycardia, heartbeat rate increases. Bradycardia, heartbeat rate decreases. Heartbeat rate decreases. Veins carries oxygen towards the heart. Arteries carries blood away from heart. Okay. Veins ले heart में पुऱ्याइदिन्छ. Veins ले blood कहाँ पुऱ्याउँछ? heart में. Veins carries blood to the heart. Arteries carries blood away from heart. Capillaries, the smallest blood vessels, connect arteries and veins. Capillaries connects arteries and veins. कितने बजे उठे? Tachycardia, heartbeat rate increases. Bradycardia, heartbeat rate decreases. Multiplied by number of heartbeat per minute. 72, 75, approximately 5 liter. Cardiac output per minute is 5 liter. Approximately 5 liter. Pulse pressure. SP, pulse pressure. Okay, pulse pressure 40 mmHg. Pulse pressure is equals to pulse pressure is equals to systolic blood pressure minus diastolic blood pressure. Systolic blood pressure minus diastolic blood pressure. Pulse rate is a direct measure of heart rate. Pulse rate is a direct measure of heart rate. 40 mmHg. Heartbeat rate in bradycardia. Heartbeat rate decreases. Veins towards heart. Blood stool away from the heart arteries. Okay, capillaries, small blood vessels connect arteries and veins. Okay, got it. Systolic blood pressure minus diastolic blood pressure. 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 Swing loan. Diastolic blood pressure on pulse pressure. Systolic blood pressure minus diastolic blood pressure. 40 mmHg. High blood pressure 140. Hypertension 140 upon 90. Low blood pressure 110 upon 70. Heart 250 to 300 grams. Dextrocardia abnormal position. Dextrocardia abnormal position 200 to 300 grams. 200 to 300 grams of heart, human heart. 200 to 300 grams. Dextrocardia abnormal position. Dextrocardia abnormal position. Dextrocardia abnormal position of the heart. Dextrocardia abnormal position of heart. Normal position, pointed apex tilted towards left. Pointed apex tilted towards left. Base pointed apex tilted towards left. Okay, normal position tilted towards left. Pointed apex tilted towards the left. Base. Okay, pericardium, pericardial fluid. This is fibrous pericardium collagen fiber. Okay, fibrous pericardium collagen fiber. Dense irregular connective tissue. Dense irregular connective tissue. It is dense irregular connective tissue. Dense irregular connective tissue. Fibrous pericardium, which is collagen fiber. Dense irregular connective tissue. Astaghfirullah. Pericardium layer, 3 layers. Parietal pericardium and visceral pericardium. बीच में क्या pericardial fluid. Okay, collagen fiber, fibrous pericardium, parietal pericardium, visceral pericardium, parietal fluid. Fibrous pericardium, collagen fiber, dense irregular connective tissue. Visceral and parietal pericardium are squamous. No, Simple squamous epithelium. Simple squamous epithelium. They are simple squamous epithelium. Parietal pericardium. बीचमा के हुन्छ पेरिकार्डियल फ्लुइड. Myocardium, smooth muscles. Myocardium भनेको smooth muscles. Endocardium, simple squamous epithelium. Simple squamous epithelium भनेको चाहिँ तिम्रो endocardium रहेछ. Myocardium, smooth muscles. Myocardium के छ smooth muscles छ. Endocardium तिम्रो छ pericardium, myocardium and then endocardium. Pericardium मा तीनटा लेयर छ. फर्स्ट के हो fibrous pericardium, parietal pericardium and visceral pericardium. There is parietal fluid between visceral and parietal pericardium. Fibrous pericardium is made up of collagen fiber, dense irregular connective tissue, pericardium, 3 layer. Okay, then we have myocardium, smooth muscles, and then endocardium, simple squamous epithelium. Again, simple squamous epithelium, endocardium. Pericardium, endocardium, simple squamous epithelium. Myocardium, smooth muscles, simple squamous epithelium. 250 to 300 runs. Dextrocardia, abnormal position. Normal position, pointed apex tilted towards left. Dextrocardia, abnormal position. Base, normal position, pointed apex tilted towards left. Layer. Blood pressure, okay, pulse, pressure which exerts on wall of blood vessels during blood measured by sphygmomanometer. Done. Cardiac output. 1 मिनटमा कति ब्लड भेन्ट्रिकलले पम्प गर्छ? 5 ml भन्दैछ, 5 लिटर भन्दैछ. कार्डिक साइकल सिस्टोल र डायस्टोल हुनु, कम्प्लिट सिस्टोल एन्ड डायस्टोल अफ के हो त्यो एट्रिया र भेन्ट्रिकल हो. कार्डिक मसल्स भन्दा पनि भयो. ओके, सिंगल कार्डिक साइकल 0.8 सेकेन्ड हुन्छ. सिंगल कन्ट्राक्सन एन्ड रिल्याक्सन, कन्ट्राक्सन र रिल्याक्सेसन एट्रियाको पनि 0.8, भेन्ट्रिकलको पनि कन्ट्राक्सन रिल्याक्सन 0.8. ओके, बाई एभ्रिवान. I'll go away. Bye bye. AVN 60 to 65 per minute, bundle of his 40 to 45 per minute, SAN 70 to 75 minute, Purkinje fiber 20 to 25 per minute. Okay, Purkinje fiber. SAN, pacemaker, pace setter, AVN. Okay, AVN 60 to 65, SAN 70 to 75, bundle of his 40 to 45, Purkinje fiber 20 to 25, Purkinje fiber 20 to 25, bundle of his 40 to 45, AVN 60 to 65, 70 to 75, SAN. Impulse per minute. Done with another session. Ayo data 25. Okay. I'll go on.